Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day. And above all else, that you are looking after yourselves and one another. Before I get into the topic of today's episode, I want to welcome back to the channel who has been gone for a few weeks by the time this airs, Mr. Bill Schuster. How's it going, Bill?
Good, Armando. Glad to be back.
Welcome back. Welcome back. I see it's bright and sunny where you are. Where I am in Edmonton, the sun is just coming up.
It's bright and sunny, but well, at this point in time, to spoil the illusion, because the way Armando tapes episodes, this may not air until late summer. Uh, it's actually snowy and icy here, and we can't get our car out of the driveway. So
Oh, jeez.
sunshine is an illusion.
No, you mentioned that before. No, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. When did that happen, by the way? Just quickly.
About a week and a half ago, the ice is hanging on. But we
Jeez.
live out in the country though, so our driveway is long and it's solid ice, and they never hit the road out here. So
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it.
warmer temperatures in the next couple days though. So
Yeah, as is to be here too. So we'll see what happens. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you to an episode we're calling Going Live. In this episode, we're going to be talking about live albums. Are they a necessary evil? Are they necessary at all? Do live albums serve a purpose? All right. Now, we're going to give you examples during this episode of I like to call proper live albums and what I like to call wastes of time in terms of live albums. Okay. Now, the ultimate question that we're going to ask is live albums, a double disc or a single disc? Which is your preference? Now, just to give a bit of background, I've watched various videos with certain bands, most notably Kiss, and they talked about when they released Alive, Kiss Alive in 1975. According to Gene Simmons, at that point in time, in the early to mid 70s, live albums really weren't um, talked about or done that much. They were considered to be the death knell for a band in terms of a record company or even the management of the band trying to drum up interest in a certain band. Having said that, once Kiss Alive came out, that son of a bitch took off like a bat out of hell. Pardon the reference, though. But and ever since around that point, first of all, Kiss Alive was released September 10th, 1975, and ever since that album came out, and based on the success of that album, um, live albums were apparently after that point sort of built into a band's contract, where you had to release a live album as part of your contract and as a part of your catalog. So, other notable albums, Phantom Comes Alive in 1976, um, which I will be revisiting uh, after this episode because I was only 6 years old when that album came out, so I really didn't appreciate the music on that album, obviously. But again, we're just going to have a free form discussion as to the merits and the demerits of live albums. So, um, again, because my mama brought me up proper, love you, mama. Um, I will pass the virtual mic over to Bill as he takes a sip of his morning coffee, and he will be discussing his views on live albums.
all
Take,
right. Thank you, sir.
you're very welcome.
We are really free forming this discussion. Our organization is loose, to say the least, for this particular episode. Sometimes
Mhm.
that makes for the most fun episodes, at least for us, if not for the audience.
Exactly.
So I'm going to take something that Armando said at the beginning, the whole question of is a live album necessary? All right, I'm going to begin in the pre-rock era, just because that's how I operate sometimes.
Yes, you
But,
do.
there's one gentleman in particular that I sometimes bring up on these shows. Uh, it's this guy, Duke Ellington. The reason I'm bringing this up in particular, well, for one thing, it's a single album. I have a bunch of other albums here that are also single albums, but this one was halfway through Duke Ellington's career. 1956, Newport Jazz Festival. He had an amazing comeback after that. And this album, even though it's technically not fully live because they did not have the proper recording at the time, it wasn't until many years later they were able to get the whole thing in stereo. So they went in the studio and re recorded part of it. But this absolutely restarted Ellington's career and made him big again until he died in 74. His career never really slowed down again. So he said very often after this that he was born at Newport in 1956.
Interesting. Okay.
That's how important he considered this album and this appearance. And to this day, this is his most popular album. Now, mind you, it's not one of my favorites, partially because it is only partially live, and I have the extended version with the full stereo concert on CD back behind me. But at the time when this came out, though, again, live albums back then were obviously not much of a thing. You know, well, I guess 56 is not quite the pre rock era, but pretty close. It's the early rock era.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this was a bit of novelty then, but it still sells well. I mean, many people, this might only be might be the only Ellington album they own.
Yeah.
Now, he has others, of course. Another single one, Ellington's Concert of Sacred Music. He has a few of these, Carnegie Hall, that were doubles, so I don't think the length mattered so much to Ellington. He has a ton of live albums, but if not for that one live album, the rest of his career might not have happened the way it did. And he put
Yeah.
out a lot of great music in those remaining years.
Hmm.
Um,
And just a little footnote, 1956 was when they went from a 10-inch format for vinyl to 12-inch. So just, more room for more music, right, per side. So there you go.
Another one from that general era. Let's see. Sorry, I'm. It doesn't have the date. I'm thinking 61 if I'm remembering right. But yeah, Ella in Berlin, Mac the Knife. Again, this was a single disc. This was in the midst of Ella Fitzgerald's most popular era in general, in the midst of her recording the songbook albums that she's still well known for to this day. But this had her cover of Mac the Knife, which was famously improvised live, became a hit. And again, for many people outside of the songbooks, this may be the only Ella album they own or know. And this also helped kick her career into higher gear. But just a single album. I mean, you have 5 songs on one side, 4 on the other. Bam, that's it. That's all that was needed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at all these jazz albums. Here's a Miles Davis album from the early 60s. Single album. Now, this was part of a 2-record set. The other half of the show was on a separate album, though. They were not released as a set.
Mm-hmm.
Famous first jazz concert in Carnegie Hall, Benny Goodman concert, 1938. All those superstars that were there, this is a single album.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't feel they needed to have everything or everyone. Bill Evans at Town Hall in the 60s, single album. I mean, apparently jazz has a theme.
Yeah.
Mostly single albums.
Yeah. Yeah. That one album looked pretty rough there. It looked like it had a bit of the cover chewed out. Before the Bill Evans album.
Oh, the Bill Evans album?
No, the one before that.
Oh, before the Benny Goodman?
The Benny Goodman, yes. It looks
that
like
is actually, it says factory sealed.
Oh,
That's the actual,
I'm sorry. Okay, it looked like
yeah.
a bit of it was gouged.
It is a sticker that was part of the package there, but obviously it's not factory sealed anymore. It's been opened.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it just looked like it was gouged out to my bad eyesight.
I
Sorry.
can see that.
Very interesting though. No, you have a
It's
good amount of live jazz albums.
now we're talking, we move into the rock era a bit. There's a lot of single albums as well. Now you thought that album looked rough. How about my copy of Elton John?
It's
On
been
this
through
one,
the
it's 11
war.
1770.
Holy, yeah, I
Yeah,
have that album.
this one's well worn. It's been with me a long time and seen some rough days, but 6 songs, 4 on side one, 2 on side two, and that's all that needed. There's an extended version that came out later, but man, this thing came out and hit hard. He came in, said what he had to say, bam, bam, bam. There you go. It's just
It
there's
worked out.
something about the single live album experience. It's enough to whet your appetite, but not get overfilled. You get satiated, but not bloated. Basically,
That's a good way to put it. Okay.
um, we have Poco delivering an early country rock album, single disc. Again, all that was needed at the time. Foghat Live, Armando and I discussed recently. There's only 6 songs on this album. This is easily
Six
the
was
most
enough.
famous Foghat album. And really, frankly, unless you're a hardcore fan, this is all the Foghat you need, pretty much. This kind of tells you who and what they are as a band. It has all but one of their hits on it, and so this album essentially defines Foghat for many fans.
Yeah, and like you said before we started taping, 6 songs was enough, believe me.
Yeah, it really was, especially for a band like this that didn't necessarily have the sonic variety that a lot of bands like, say, Queen or someone like that would have.
Yeah,
Um, all right, Blue Oyster Cult, one of my favorite bands.
I have that as well. Yeah.
This is a single that was released later. I have the CD DVD copy with the extra stuff somewhere around here too, but I don't know. It didn't add
Yeah.
a whole lot to it still. Now, I'm a Blue Oyster Cult. I'm a big time fan, but I'm not a big fan of their albums because of the song selection. I mean, there's only 7 songs on this. 2 of them are covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too many, despite having 5 original albums out at the time. But this at the time was the only place to get a live version of Astronomy, which is the fan favorite song. And it was the
Mhm.
first time there was a live version of Don't Fear the Reaper or Godzilla. So,
Okay.
and obviously the cover's pretty badass. So, yeah, this album is still a
Yeah.
favorite of many people today, though I'm not one of them.
Yeah, I have 2 copies of that. I have the original vinyl and the CD version in the box set with the full show with the extra tracks. See, that it
Uh,
back
the,
it, sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was jumping ahead to the next one. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it just begs the question with live albums, and we'll talk about it more, but should live albums be a double disc or a single disc?
All right, I'm going to give my 2 favorite live albums. Armando knows what they are. We've discussed this recently here. So now, this one you're really going to have to forgive the condition of the cover because this thing got flood damage. The record still plays great, but U2
Ooh,
live under a blood red sky.
talk about damage.
Oh, big time. Yeah, the water got it bad. But yeah, 8 songs, 4 per side. I mean, it really is like this hard hitting album. It's after their 3rd album came out, after War came out. So they had 3 albums to pick from. They pulled what they thought was the cream of the crop, apparently, out
Hmm.
of the shows. And there was an extended version of this later as well, much extended. Many more songs, but I find it to be rather bloated compared to this. After being so used to this concise album where not a note was wasted, this just feels perfect. It feels like if anyone asked me, what does U2 sound like? This is the album I would give them.
Really? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think
Interesting.
if they didn't like anything here, well, you're probably not going to like a whole lot of U2. But,
I have that album as well.
and of course, sometimes called Unleashed in the Studio. It's actually called Unleashed in the East by Judas Priest. Their first live album, a single, 9 songs. Uh, we talked a bit before recording started about what happened here. The only thing that's not live is Rob Halford's vocals because of issues that happened at the time that he had to re-record the vocals in the studio, but everything else is live. Uh, this takes 9 songs from their catalog at that point and perfects them. These are improved versions. Uh, I mean, these are the ultimate versions. This again, much like the U2 album, if somebody wanted to know what Judas Priest sounded like, this is what I would hand them before any studio album.
Okay.
I don't need you got another thing coming or anything like that. No, give me this every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so you're saying that those are examples of good single live albums that are enough.
Yeah. I'd say there is a again with Unleashed in the East, there was a one that had 4 more songs added. They're fine. They're good songs, but to me, again, after being so used to the concise, powerful nature of that single album, it just seemed extraneous. I mean, there was no, it didn't really feel like it belonged.
Okay.
So it's good it's available, but when I listen to it, I don't listen to the one with the bonus tracks. I pop the record on and hear the original.
Yeah. I
Now,
listened
why
to,
does, oh, go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just gonna say I listened to both the Foghat and the Judas Priest albums yesterday, and on YouTube they have the 13 track version of uh,
Unleashed.
Unleashed in the East. Yeah, you know what, I would agree with you. After Tyrant, there's no need to go further on Unleashed in the East, which is rare for me because you know my opinion on live albums. But no, yeah, I cut you off. I apologize. What were you gonna
Oh,
say?
that's all right. Trying to think what is it that makes an artist decide on a single versus live. I got this particular example here. Right, this is Joe Jackson. Everybody that knows me at all knows I'm a huge Joe Jackson fan. This is live 1980 to 86. It is a double album, but each side is from a different tour. So essentially, it's like 4 half record live albums. But technically, it is a double, so I'll give it that. But after that, though, albums that came out live in New York City, that was 99, 2000. Single. Here, a couple of years later, we have Joe Jackson Live, 2 Rainy Nights, Seattle and Portland, single. 2005, Joe Jackson Band, Afterlife, single. 2010, Joe Jackson Trio, live music. You get the. Why did Joe
I
go
get the
from
gist.
this technically double album to, you know what? I'm going to put out single live albums essentially for the rest of my career. What
I
was the
th
thinking there for an artist like that? To
I think I know why.
why do you think?
Well, pressure from the record company.
Do you think because a single album would be cheaper to produce, or
That's that is usually the reason why record companies will not release are hesitant, I should say, to release double studio albums in the first place. So to release a double live album, a record company would say it's more economical to release a single disc as opposed to a double disc. And from a price point of view, they it's all economics. right? With record companies. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Well, I have
Um,
two balls, just two more before
yeah,
step away from
no, no, no.
simple discs here.
You're doing
Uh,
fine. You're doing
these
fine.
are a couple examples of weird cases that I'm kind of curious to hear what you think about the record companies regarding these. Pink Floyd, Umaguma, Umaguma, however one chooses to pronounce it. It's a double album, but one is studio and one is live. So technically it is only a single live album with 4 songs total, as you know, you well know. Um, the Marshall Tucker Band, Where We All Belong, is the same thing. It's a double album. One is live with 4 songs, and the other album is a studio album, or the other record.
Hmm.
So where do these fit into it? I mean, why would the record company authorize something odd like this?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
Um, Usually a band will release um, a double disc where one disc is a studio and one disc is live, where maybe they're introducing a new member of the band, from a live point of view to do the old stuff, like the classics, and then to do the studio stuff to introduce them as part of the band going forward from that point on, kind of thing. That's the only reason why I would think that they would do that. But um, yeah, no, it's a mystery as to why. Like personally, for me, um, I don't understand the reasoning behind releasing a a live album, but one, a double disc. One is live and one is studio. I don't understand that concept. Like I can't get behind that. For me, hmm, it's an interesting question because for me, if it's a band I really like or I'm interested to listen to, if they're going to release a live album, I want to hear the entire show. Everyone knows my opinion on that. I've said this before with Jim Bricker. Usually, a live album for a band is a snapshot of where they were at that particular point in time in their career, right? And as I said at the top of the show, it got to the point where, they had it written in their contracts where record companies wanted a live album because I think they wanted to recapture the sales that Kiss Alive had. Okay. Um, but again, I personally, we can go off into so many avenues. I personally don't think that you can get the full live experience of a band on a single disc. You know what I mean? Unless you're interested in only listening to the greatest hits live. Do you know what I mean? Of a band. Let's take the example of Live Killers, right, from Queen, where, you know, um, Roger Taylor has come out and said he hates the album. He can't stand the album. That the only live things on that album are the bass and the drums. Everything else was re-recorded, apparently. And then, it's a double album, 22 songs, done on the European leg of the Jazz Tour, which to me, listening to it, it's a fantastic album. Now, in 1985, Elektra in North America, and I do believe in Japan and in Australia and New Zealand, released a single version of Live Killers. Why?
What would they take off?
Obviously, they would keep Bohemian Rhapsody, but what is the purpose of that? I, I don't get that. I still, I mean, I don't think that you can get, again, the full experience of a concert of a 2 hour show compressed to one disc. It like shortened to one disc. I don't get it. I don't understand it, you know. And then when you talk about the Kiss Alive album, um, essentially what was going on is the first three albums did not sell. Thank you. Thank you. The first three albums, self-titled Hotter Than Hell and Dress to Kill, didn't sell nearly enough, 50, 60,000 each. And Casablanca Records was running out of money. So what they wanted to do was to capture the live essence of Kiss, because what was being said was by the critics and by people they knew that the energy just of your shows just isn't there on the studio albums. So they wanted to record a live album to represent Kiss in a concert setting. And they said, okay, we'll do this. If it doesn't sell, at least we'll have a souvenir. Well, they recorded, their 75-minute set. This thing took off like gangbusters. And for Kiss, for example, I didn't know they had three albums before Alive, right? I thought that this was being a 6 year old, I thought, or a 7 year old, I thought that this was the launch of their career, right? And when you listen to that album, you are immersed in that concert. Um, Whether you're a fan of the band or not. I mean, explosions are going off and, all this kind of stuff. Um, Only to find out years later that guitar parts were overdubbed in the studio, that vocals were re-recorded in the studio because these the the band couldn't keep their shit together. I mean, they were jumping all over stage, they were like knocking over mics, they were missing their cues for vocals. So it also begs the question, when is a live album an actual live album?
And how important is it for it to be a live album rather than a listenable album? Those could be two different things, and each have a different purpose for a fan.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, like, okay, you gave some good examples of single live albums. Do you have any? What you showed the Kiss.
Double.
Do you have examples of good double live albums?
Do I have good double live? Well, good's pretty subjective, but let's see here. All right, I'm going to throw this guy.
In your opinion. In your
Yeah. I'm going to throw this one right off the bat before I hit the records here. Mr. Zappa, Can't Do That on Stage 2.
I have that.
Helsinki concert, Zappa in New York.
Yes.
Best band you've never heard in your life. Make a Jazz Noise Here. These are all double albums. Zappa was definitely a double live album guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he had a lot to say, and there was a whole lot of variety in his live shows.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be like Foghat making a double live album, be like, oh, yep, there's another bluesy boogie rock song, sure enough. So
yeah,
it depends a lot on the artist whether they can actually sustain more than a single live album.
Exactly. Exactly.
He's one example of someone who I think pretty clearly could, unless you just hate Zappa, but that's a whole other story. Let's see here. How about a couple of Neils with their record store price tag still on even? Neil Diamond, Hot August Night. Neil Young, Live Rust. These are
opposite ends of the spectrum.
What's that?
Opposite ends of the spectrum.
Absolutely. Both from 70s, early 70s, late 70s, but these were essentially minus a few items, greatest hits albums for these guys live. I
Okay.
mean, they both had enough successful song that they could even
Okay.
then fill a double album easily with songs that people want to hear. I think in a lot of cases that's part of being able to sustain a live album. Unless you're doing something really unique, people need to know a certain amount of the songs. You have to have some songs that people are going to be like, hey, oh yeah, oh wow, let me get that, I want to hear all these songs. If you
Yeah.
only have a couple of hits and you're trying to sell a double live album, that's probably going to be a harder sell outside of the hardcore fan base.
True enough. Oh, you're right. You're right. Good examples.
Let's We have same era generally. Uriah Heep live, the first Rush live album, All the World to See.
Fantastic album.
I mean,
I've
these
got that.
doubles, yeah, um, great double albums. Very famous UFO Strangers in the Night double album. And Armando can perhaps speak of his experience on that, shall we say,
Yes, I
bloated the
have it.
box set.
I have the you see that begs another question. A few years ago, the band released Strangers in the Night, the box set. Uh, and it's a 5 or 6 disc um uh, I have it here if I can grab it. But it's a box set, ladies and gentlemen, of the entire tour of Strangers in the Night, of the music that would end up being on Strangers in the Night. And I'm trying to pick it up. I don't want to drop it, guys. But what you have here, I'll show it to you. To give my stubby fingers, guys. Whoa, it's gonna fall out. Hold on. To give the fingers, but here it is. It's the box set,
Yeah,
right?
things too.
It's as you can tell, it's the box set there, right? There we go. Now, what you have here is the uh, okay, how many CDs here? 8 CDs. Okay, the first 2 discs are the original album of Strangers in the Night, LP1 and LP2. But what you have here, the other 6 discs are the full shows, and what they did was they cherry picked the best versions of the tracks to appear on the original Strangers in the Night. It's the same show over and over again on 6 discs, right? For the entire tour. My question is, was this totally necessary? I mean, for any fan of the band and for a collector, yes, this is if you want the entire show, if there's a version of a certain song that you want from any given night, it's on this set. But it was this totally necessary? I'm not saying it in a bad way or a good way. I'm asking a question for everyone out there to answer. Was it necessary to release this entire tour in one set with the same songs over and over and over again? I will reserve judgment on that to the end of the show.
I think it comes down to how hardcore a fan one
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Even my favorite artists, some if Joe Jackson or Rush or and somebody like that that is
yeah,
absolutely at the peak of my musical mountain were to put out a set like that had the exact same show over and over, just different nights,
yeah,
I wouldn't buy it. One is sufficient.
yeah. I wouldn't do it either. I wouldn't, looking back on it, I wouldn't do it either. Even for Queen, I mean, case in point, the Queen 1 massive box set that came out in October. The the set has live concert tracks from Rainbow 74. I already have the Rainbow 74 box set. Do I need this again? Do I and there is one live track called Hangman that the band played live written by Freddie Mercury, but never recorded in the studio. They did a version of that in 1976 of Hangman in California. I believe it was in California on the one of the first US tours. Am I going to spend $256 for a 6 disc set or a 7 disc set, sorry, for that one song? No, no, but I digress, right? I mean,
Oh, I agree. That I mean, well, that's my favorite Queen album. I love
yeah,
that album, but not a chance I'd buy that set. I'll stick with my record of the album, and I'll stick with my Blu-ray of Live to Rainbow, and that's enough for me. That's I don't need
yeah,
to pay that much for one song or
yeah. No,
yeah. I mean,
no, I get it. I get it. You were showing us sorry, I cut
oh,
you off there. You were showing us other examples of double live albums that are
this is kind of an odd one.
worth it.
The Pointer Sisters live at the Opera House. This is the early to mid '70s version of the Pointer Sisters.
With Bonnie Pointer.
Yeah, this is before they started, having the late '70s through mid '80s nonstop run of hits that they had. But they were having hits in the early '70s though. There are only a few on here. Yes, we can. Wang Dang Doodle. Fairy Tale. But for the most part, though, this is a lot of oddball things like Salt Peanuts, the classic, Dizzy Gillespie track that, so famous. Him and Charlie Parker made it a big, huge thing in bebop. Black Coffee, another old standard. It has oddball tracks like that. Bemir bis de Schön. I'm quite certain I butchered that German title, but I just wanted to say it to give you an idea. So this is a case of a double album where there were approximately 3 hits on here, but they filled out the rest of it with odd, interesting things to make it a unique live experience.
Okay.
It wasn't just, okay, let's throw on our filler album tracks
Yeah.
along with the 3 hits.
Yeah.
So I think that helps in the case. Now, I have no idea what the sales were like for this. So I cannot attest to how successful that strategy might have been.
Yeah.
Um, there are some summaries here of, this was REO Speedwagon live. You get what you play for. This was before their big breakthrough with High Infidelity in 1980. So it did not have any of those hits, but this is essentially a summary of their hard rock '70s period,
Mm-hmm.
just prior to when they got to roll with the changes and Time for Me to Fly.
Mm-hmm.
So this really didn't have hits. I mean, you could say Riding the Storm Out was a hit. I mean, nowadays it seems like it should have been a hit because it's been played incessantly on rock radio stations for decades. But at any rate, I digress here. Yeah, even without hits, this was one of those. It summed up the band enough, and it got a lot of people into the band.
Mm-hmm.
We have, of course, another famous MOR type band, Journey, Capture.
Yes.
There's this, much like the REO, this is before they really hit their pop peak with Escape. This is when Greg Rowley was still in the band before Jonathan Cain joined.
Yeah, with the one studio track, The Party's Over.
Yeah, which is always kind of odd. That's another thing on the live album. I mean, we talked about the one live record combined with one studio record, but
Yeah,
then you have things
yeah,
like this, or like Kiss Alive 2 with, or Genesis 3 sides live. These albums with 3 live sides and one studio side.
yeah,
What?
yeah.
Why?
I don't, yeah, I don't get that. That's another uh that's another pill I can't really swallow. And that, you know, journey, with the party's over with the one live track, and then you have like, Kiss Alive 2, which depending who you talk to, it wasn't even alive at all.
Sure.
Where they do the three sides and then they do the one studio side. And the only reason why they did that was because they didn't have enough songs, original songs to do live. They didn't want to do a repeat from Kiss Alive 1. So instead of doing another Rock and Roll All Night live, they just recorded some studio tracks, and I don't get it. I don't get it. And
No.
even with the Genesis Three Sides Live, those songs were released on the studio side were released on EPs in I believe in Europe and in the UK. They had another side of live material. Why
Yeah.
not just release it as a complete live album? Like I don't get it. It boggles what's left of my mind. In terms of why they did that. I don't get that. I don't get that.
At least with the Kiss Alive 2, though I don't necessarily agree with their solution. I just think they should have waited another studio album or two so they had more material. I
Yeah.
do appreciate the fact that they didn't just want to regurgitate songs that were on the previous live album. That's one thing that drives me crazy. I know it's a necessity. Record companies and stuff like every Blue Oyster Cult album has to have Don't Fear the Reaper, Burning for You, and Godzilla. Boring. Great
Yeah.
songs, but boring. Same, I mean, Joe Jackson. Yes, yes, of course. Yeah, stepping out. Yay, yeah, yeah. She's really going out with him. Woohoo for the 12 billionth version. I mean, at
Yeah.
least Joe shakes it up and does variations and different arrangements, but still,
There's a difference. Yeah. Yeah.
even then, I want different songs. I don't want multiple live albums with the same songs over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
At this point, you're not selling to casual fans anymore. If you're selling that many different live albums,
Yeah.
you're looking at the hardcore fan base that's going to buy that many different live albums. So why not
Exactly.
cater to them instead of, well, we better put Don't Fear the Reaper on there, or it's just not going to sell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's
No, no,
buying
no.
it besides real fans?
Yeah.
Nobody at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a separate rant, but
No, I know. I know. And I got to mention the other elephant in the room. Um, you and I both have both said how much we like Queen Life Killers, right? In 1986, after the end of the Magic Tour, the band released an album called Live Magic, which I'll obviously put the graphic up for. I bought it. It was a single disc, 15 tracks on Capitol Records, EMI. I took it home. I'm looking at the playing list, the track list, sorry. I noticed Bohemian Rhapsody, 4 minutes and 21 seconds. WTF. What the fuck? Okay. I put it on. They removed the operatic section from the song. So you have the ballad section that goes into the guitar solo, and then you hear the opening piano, the first three piano notes, of the operatic section, and then it goes into the rock section, like an edit. And I thought, no, it
now,
is bad. It
is
is
that
bad.
is it worse than what they did on Live Killers, where they were very open about actually putting the record on during that part of the song and playing it while they left the stage?
Well, it's worse than that because you know what? They're being honest. They've
Yeah, I would
always
tend to
said
agree.
they've always said the operatic section in Rhapsody is multi-tracked. It would look stupid for us to stand there on stage and mimic and lip sync that part. So we play it. This is what Brian May said. We play it because we know you want to hear it. So instead of just standing there like idiots miming, we go off stage, we change, we come back on, and we finish with the rock portion of the song. That's honesty. You know,
So, all right, my hot take regarding Queen of the day. I think the best live version of Bohemian Rhapsody is by Pink and her band because they did the whole thing live. Now, to be fair, she had extra singers,
yes.
so she wasn't dealing with a four-person band.
No,
So,
no, she had backup singers and she had, yeah, extra musicians and yeah. Are you referring to her doing it live in Australia? When,
yes,
yeah, that's, yeah,
that's a
yes,
badass version.
yes. And yeah, no, I will say that. But I mean, I will give Queen credit that they're honest about it because
Yeah,
when they first did Rhapsody live, uh, separate ramp, but when they did Rhapsody live originally, it was the just as part of a medley in 1975. And they would start with the intro of the the concert would start with the operatic section of Rhapsody, and then they would go into the rock portion, and then they would go into Ogre Battle as a second track. Then around 77, Freddie Mercury said, "Why don't we just play this live? We'll do it all, like we'll do what we can do live, but for the operatic section, we'll just put on the tape and we'll come back out, go out, change our clothes, come back, and then do the rock section and finish it." People loved it. They knew it was taped, but the lights and the smoke and the hoopla of the audience, like the enthusiasm of the audience carried it through. They knew what was going on, right? So I give them credit for that. Okay. Um, with Live Magic, you have in the on the vinyl you have edited for versions of Seven Seas of Rye, Tie Your Mother Down, and the edited version of Rhapsody, which to me is an abomination. Sorry, I can't listen to it.
yeah, I would agree. I would much rather hear the version with the record than even. At least I don't have my original copy of Live Killers anymore. Sadly, it's long lost. But I do remember in the liner notes those cool with the green sleeve and the red sleeve. I do remember they very clearly stated exactly that they put the record on and left because they couldn't recreate that live. There was no deception about it whatsoever.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
good on them for that.
yeah. So you have more examples of
Um, you might be familiar with this one,
yes, I have
Paris.
the full version of that too.
I'm on record, of course, as saying that I prefer the studio albums, but this is a great live album.
Yeah.
It's one Crime of the Century song short though, so points down for that.
If you can get yourself a copy of Live in Paris,
Got
which
it.
is the double disc, amazing. It blows Paris out of the water. But yeah, yeah.
Um, Another one here, Kansas, two for the show.
I have that on CD.
This one came out later. I mean, this is a double album, of course. Um, this came out later with essentially twice as much material on CD.
Yes.
That's a lot of extra material. I mean, you're essentially looking at turning a double into a quadruple.
Yes. Yes. And
That's
and it's got to be said too, vinyl albums, they only have a playing time of 19 to 20 minutes per side. So you only have, if you're doing a vinyl release, you only have a certain amount of time to play with.
yeah.
Because if you start to um, pack sides of vinyl with songs, you're losing sound quality big time.
You could on a double album, you could get in roughly an hour and a half show and be all right
Yeah, yeah,
if you did the whole show.
yeah.
Um, Now those are examples of doubles, but there's a particular genre that likes to go over the top.
Hmm.
Now this is thank you to Keith, whoever you are, for my renewed copy of Yes Songs here, which is Keith. Um, of course, a famous triple disc, the full fold out and everything, the full package with the Roger Dean artwork inside. Uh, with a band like Yes, or welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, ladies and gentlemen. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, also a triple disc. Now these bands, especially in the '70s, were known for long songs, being over the top. They probably need the extra space
Yeah.
just to do all the things that they do. I mean, you look at Yes songs, you got Close to the Edge takes up one entire side. You have Yours is No Disgrace and Starship Trooper take up another side. There's only one side that has more than 3 songs, and that's 4 songs.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, it's really not, because it's Remove All Good People and
Mm-hmm.
Long Distance Run Around the Fish, which are essentially each 2 songs combined into one. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I have both
uh,
albums. They're good.
yeah, and of course, this one, I mean, you got Tarkus takes a whole side, Carnival 9 first impression takes a whole side, second, third impressions take a whole side. I mean, yeah, these kind of progressive rock bands were absolutely meant for extended albums.
Yeah.
But what about if you're not really a progressive rock band? I mean, what do you call this particular band? I'm not quite sure what we would call. Some would say they're progressive adjacent, but this is one of the most famously bloated live albums ever.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, this is
Chicago
Chicago
Live at,
Carnegie Hall,
yes.
volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yes. And that's not even the full package.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you can see how big this thing is. You got to have the 4 record sleeves in there and the book.
I have it. I have it. I paid 19.99 for that. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
paid 11.99 for this used. So.
Yeah. No, I did. That was used too. My copy was used too. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what the point we're getting at. There is a full 16 disc set of these shows of Chicago Live at Carnegie Hall. 16 discs that you can
Too
probably
much.
get from Rhino Music still, running at $256 American.
No,
Okay.
I mean,
Th this brings another question. When is enough enough in terms of a live release? Should there be a 16 disc version of Live at Carnegie Hall when it's the same show as with Stranger in the Night from UFO over and over and over again times 16? Is that is that even should that even be allowed? Let's put it that way. You know what I mean? So,
I would say as long as someone is willing to put the money and time into making it, and other people are willing to put the money into buying it, then by all means it should exist. Am I going to buy it? Not a chance. This, as much as I love those early Chicago albums,
yeah.
this is too much. If to me, when a live album becomes too much, if I lose interest before it's over and I have to stop.
Hmm.
If I don't like, if it's a record like this where you actually have to get up and flip it to each side, if I get to a point where I'm like, you know what, I've had enough sides, I'm not flipping. That tells me it's too much. And that always happens with this. I've
Really?
tried to marathon my way through this, and I'm just like, before it's over, I'm okay, no, I've had enough. I need something else. So
Okay.
this is when it's too much for me, apparently.
All right.
Chicago Carnegie Hall.
Hmm. Okay. Well, good to know. All right. Any more examples of when enough is enough?
Has in too much? Let's see. I think that's really the big offender that always comes to mind, because I
Okay.
mean, I'm trying to think of more quadruple live sets, or more that are not like actual box sets that have been released,
Yeah.
past the original album.
Well, your shirt, Woodstock.
Oh, yes, that's right. I even had the movie sitting here. Thank you. That's why I wore this shirt.
There you go.
Yeah.
Um,
How much was the original album? Was that a four record set?
I think it was a triple disc set.
Was it triple? I couldn't remember. But I know they reissued it again and it had a lot more. It had like the four.
Yes, there is a 10 disc set,
Yeah.
which
In that case,
begs again the question. The original triple disc vinyl set of Woodstock, would that be a set for you, that a concert album for you that would be enough because of the variety on it, or would that be too much?
yes. I think so. That's the key. I mean, with something like that, I mean, I don't have the record either version of it anymore. I'm satisfied with the movie here. It's got a ton of stuff, but yeah, that makes a huge difference knowing that it's multiple artists and you get to hear, each individual set, but each individual set is not super long.
Yeah,
So even if a particular artist is not among my favorites, it's not bad because it doesn't last super long. So
yeah.
no one overstays their welcome, really.
No, no, I agree with you. Well, for me, again, like I said at the beginning of the show, or during the show, that for me, I do not know how you can get the full concert experience of any band or any artist with a single disc album. I do believe that if you're going to release a live album, it should be a good representation musically of a band at that given time, or an artist at that given time. And I honestly do not believe that you can do that with a single disc. I do believe that, for example, Queen Live Killers, even though I'm biased about Queen, is a good example of a live album because you have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And you have a lot of stuff going on sonically, a lot of different emotions, a lot of different mood settings with with the acoustic sets, etc. on the album. So I do believe that that is a good representation of a live album. Sound wise, that's a different story because that's a whole other
Yeah.
episode. I do believe in that with the once you get into the realm of UFO, Stranger in the Night, and and Chicago, when where you're releasing, you know, 16 disc versions of the same shows over and over again, or 8 discs, or an extra 6 disc version of a set where you have the same show over and over again. Or another example of, uh, we talked about before we went on camera, um, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Do we need, as much as we love it, do we need a 30-minute version of Dazed and Confused?
No.
There you go. There you go.
Uh,
So,
Zeppelin did a lot of cool stuff live when they were having a good night. Um, but yeah, I don't care who you are. I don't really need an extended 30-minute version of virtually anything from anyone unless it was originally something approaching that. Like,
exactly. I have a copy of Led Zeppelin live called The Flying Circus, which was done in February of 1975 at Madison Square Garden. It is a triple disc set, um, and it is a soundboard recording. I paid like $50 for it off of Discogs. And ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, you can't get it anymore. It's done. It's not available. But on there is a 30-minute version of Dazed and Confused. Why? It gets to the point where it gets too tedious, where it's too long, you know? Um, but there you go. There is my opinion of it. I think if you have an album, a live album that is done well and is a good representation of, in terms of music, a good cross section of tracks, I think you're doing well. But again, I don't think you can get that on a single disc. I just don't get that. I don't understand that
I
myself.
did, and you were talking about Zeppelin, and we have discussed, the song remains the same. And I actually did take time. I had never listened to the extended, I think 2007 was it, release of
Yeah.
Song Remains the Same with added songs put back in. I think that actually improves the Song Remains the Same.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
Part of that is because these are shorter songs that they added in
And
rather than a whole lot of bloat. These are, stuff like Black Dog, Over the Hills and Far Away, Misty Mountain Hop, Heartbreaker. I mean, these are the kind of songs that they're adding on here.
yeah, there you go. There's another example where when I bought the original copy of the original version of A Song Remains the Same, I was a novice Zeppelin listener, but I knew looking at the track listing, 9 songs. No way in hell did I believe that that was the full set, right? And on that version, you have a 26-minute version of Dazed and Confused. It's all upside too. On the reissue, it's 29 minutes and change. And all it is that's added in is an additional guitar section, like good and drum pattern. That's like one extra measure that's put in. That's it. But having said that, I do believe, as a side note, that the version of um, that version of Dazed and Confused on the song Remains the Same is the quintessential live version of that song. I'm just saying. But yeah, no, there you go. I do believe that the extended version of the song Remains the Same, the 16 track version, I think is the better version. I think it adds there's more dimensions to it than what was the original. And the band themselves say that the original song Remains the Same is not the best live representation of the band. You know, um, I personally also prefer How the West Was Won in terms of from Led Zeppelin in terms of a triple live disc. Okay, I mean,
I'd prefer the new Song Remains the Same over How the West Was Won. Or actually, I'd prefer the Led Zeppelin DVD set that came out years ago. I love that thing, but that's a
yeah,
whole
I have
separate
that as
issue.
well somewhere in the
But
house. I do have that too. Yeah, yeah,
I think the reason I would prefer the 2007 Song Remains the Same version with the added tracks is because of the song selection compared to How the West Was Won.
yeah.
For one thing, the Rain song is not on How the West Was Won, and that is the ultimate sin for me
Okay.
in a Led Zeppelin set. If the Rain song's not there, especially on a tour in 1973 when Houses of the Holy came out, no, I'm out.
Okay.
Gotta have it.
Duly noted. Duly noted. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it for our episode of Going Live. Live albums. Are they a necessity? Are they a hindrance? Are they even necessary at all? I mean, you know, it's an open-ended question. Everyone has their opinion, and we gave you ours. We gave you some good examples of some good single live albums in the jazz field. We give you some good example of some bad examples of some live albums of the single live albums in the rock field, and some good examples of some albums, double albums, sorry, in the rock field. So again, sorry.
I do have just one more that just crossed my mind here. I
Yes.
should have thought of it earlier. There's a band that is very famous for supposedly their live albums being better than their studio albums. In fact, some fans think studio albums aren't even necessary. I wouldn't go that far, but we're talking about the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And they have countless official and unofficial bootlegs, so many complete shows out there.
Yeah.
without live albums, the Dead would not be near as famous as they are. They
Yes.
would not have ever existed in quite the form that they did without those live shows. So that's an
Yes.
example of a band, and that's also a rare example of a band that I wouldn't mind going and stretching out in the way that Dazed Confused was, but like say the Grateful Dead taking Dark Star, taking that short song and turning it into 25, 30-minute song. That's a
Yeah.
whole different vibe.
Yeah.
So that's I just thought they should be absolutely mentioned in a live show.
And
So
you brought up another issue, another point. I recently, almost 2 years ago, purchased a Grateful Dead live box set. Um, and a number of the tracks are badly recorded.
yeah.
I mean they're not even close to the mic. You can't even hear the vocals. Um, if you're gonna put out an official set of live material of a series of concerts, you need to go through and pick better sounding shows, vote for, whether it be the vocals or the guitars or whatever. You need to, not all bootleg releases should, how can I put this? Start again. Not all bootleg recordings should be released.
Sure.
That's
But in the case of a band like that, sometimes even that less than stellar sound is part of the vibe also.
granted, granted. But I mean, that's my own opinion on that. So
Oh
there you
yeah.
go. Well, like I said, though, you ain't one to, I am not one to gossip, so you didn't hear that from me.
We know better,
Um,
folks. We know
There you
better.
go. There you go. So again, ladies and gentlemen, again, going live, please give us your opinion on live albums. Again, are they a necessity? Are they not? Um, are they a good live representation of a band during a certain time in their career, um, or not? Again, it's an open-ended question, no right or wrong answers, just opinions. So please give us your opinions. And I want to thank Bill for coming along with me on this free-form conversation on live albums. All right.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be back.
Well, no, you're going to be back more. We're going to do more shows together. I promise you.
Of course,
Um,
now I have this stack of records that I have to put back in order in the racks again. Thank you very much.
you're very welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, please put your comments down below. Please click like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content I've got coming up. I've got more shows coming up with Bill and with Jim Bricker and Ken Cheshire, and we will see you soon with those episodes as quickly as we can get them done. All right, please look after yourselves and one another, and we'll see you soon for more shows. Bye for now.